The alarms of the crystal citadel wailed like wounded beasts, their sound vibrating through the marble corridors as soldiers scattered in panic. Banners of the Terran Alliance burned where plasma bolts had torn through them, and the night sky above the palace dome glowed sickly green from the alien armada hovering overhead. Elias Vaughn ran through the chaos with a rifle clutched to his chest, his breath ragged and his thoughts narrowed to a single point: the princess must survive. He was not a hero by legend or bloodline, just a line infantryman pulled from a mining colony on Orpheus 9. His armor bore dents from past battles and the faded emblem of a unit long since dissolved. Yet his legs carried him faster than fear as he vaulted fallen debris and ducked beneath collapsing arches. Ahead of him, the inner sanctum doors stood half open, their golden inlays scorched and melting. Inside waited Princess Seraphine, last heir of the Terran coalition, the symbol that held a dozen star systems together and the primary target of the invaders. A shrill hiss echoed behind him, and a bolt of alien energy screamed past his shoulder, slamming into a pillar and turning stone to vapor. Elias threw himself through the doorway as the doors slammed shut behind him, locking with a heavy thrum that briefly muted the sounds of war. The chamber beyond was lit by flickering hololamps, casting long shadows across silken walls. Seraphine stood near the central dais, her ceremonial armor half donned, her silver hair tangled from the sudden evacuation. She turned as he entered, her eyes wide yet steady. "You came back," she said, her voice calm despite the tremor in her hands. "Orders were clear," Elias replied, forcing a grin as he checked the rifle's charge. "No one gets through me." The doors shuddered as something massive struck them from the outside, dents blooming across the metal like bruises. Elias stepped in front of Seraphine without thinking, placing his body squarely between her and the threat, every instinct screaming that this was where his story ended. The metal tore open in a spray of molten fragments and smoke, and through the breach strode creatures of nightmare, tall and sinuous, their chitinous armor gleaming like obsidian, their eyes glowing with cold intelligence. At their center loomed a larger figure, crowned with barbed spines and draped in living armor that pulsed faintly with violet light. The alien queen had come in person. Her gaze swept the room and settled on Seraphine, then shifted to Elias, lingering there with something like curiosity. Her mandibles clicked softly as if tasting the air. Elias raised his rifle and fired, the weapon bucking in his hands as bolts of coherent light slammed into the nearest attackers. One fell screeching, another staggered, but the queen lifted a clawed hand and an invisible force crushed the shots to nothing inches from her body. She advanced, unhurried, her presence pressing down on Elias like gravity. He felt his knees want to buckle, but he held firm, stepping forward instead, placing himself fully in her path. "Get back," he shouted to Seraphine, though he never took his eyes off the queen. "Run if you can." Seraphine hesitated only a second, then moved toward the hidden escape panel behind the dais, her gaze never leaving Elias' back. The queen tilted her head, clearly amused, and gestured. Her warriors surged forward in a blur of claws and blades. Elias emptied his rifle until it clicked dry, then threw it aside and drew the short plasma knife from his belt. He met them head-on. Pain exploded across his body as blows slipped past his guard, armor cracking, flesh burning. Yet he kept moving, every strike aimed not to win, but to delay, to be a wall of meat and will between the princess and oblivion. A blade pierced his side, another tore through his shoulder. He felt warm blood soak his undersuit, yet he laughed through clenched teeth, a raw, defiant sound that echoed in the chamber. "Not today," he growled. The queen watched it all without intervening, her eyes bright, her breathing slow. When Elias finally faltered, dropping to one knee, she raised her hand again, and her warriors froze mid-strike. She stepped forward, looming over him, and with a single clawed finger lifted his chin, forcing him to meet her gaze. The pressure was immense, yet strangely gentle, as if she were testing a fragile object. "You shield what you cannot defeat," her voice echoed directly in his mind, smooth and resonant. "You offer your body for another's future." Behind him, Elias heard the faint whisper of the escape panel opening, Seraphine's last chance slipping into motion. "That's kind of the job," Elias rasped, blood flecking his lips. The Queen's mandibles parted in what might have been a smile, her eyes narrowing with something dangerously close to admiration. "Then you are valuable," she said, "and value is claimed." Energy surged from her hand, not a killing blow but a binding force that wrapped around Elias like living chains, lifting him from the ground, his vision blurred as darkness crept in at the edges. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Seraphine looking back through the closing panel, her mouth forming his name in silent horror. Then the world went dark, and Elias Vaughn, soldier of no renown, became the prize of an alien queen. Elias drifted in and out of consciousness to the rhythm of alien engines, a deep resonant hum that vibrated through his bones and made his teeth ache. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, metallic and sweet, and every breath burned slightly in his lungs. When his eyes finally opened, he found himself suspended in a field of soft violet light, his wounds sealed beneath translucent bands of energy, the pain dulled to a distant throb as if his body had been wrapped in warm fog. He was no longer in the citadel. Above him arched a ceiling of living crystal that pulsed like a slow heartbeat, veins of light flowing through it in shifting patterns. Beneath him, the floor was smooth and organic, warm to the touch, curving upward into walls that seemed grown rather than built. He tried to move and realized he could. The binding force had relaxed into a gentle restraint, more a suggestion than a prison. His muscles responded sluggishly but obeyed, and he pushed himself upright with a groan. Memory flooded back all at once. The breach, the Queen, Seraphine's face as the panel closed, his hand clenched into a fist as guilt and relief warred inside his chest. "So you wake," a voice echoed, rich and layered, not spoken aloud but resonating inside his thoughts. Elias looked up. The alien queen stood at the far end of the chamber, framed by a throne grown from black crystal and living metal. Her armor shifted subtly with her movements, plates sliding and locking like a breathing organism. Her eyes glowed softly, fixed entirely on him. "Where am I?" Elias asked, his voice hoarse yet steady. "You are aboard my flagship," she replied, descending the steps toward him with unhurried grace, "the heart of my dominion." "Then kill me or lock me up," he said, forcing himself to stand fully, swaying slightly. "Either way, don't dress it up." A ripple of amusement brushed his mind, surprising him with its warmth. "You mistake my intent," the Queen said, circling him slowly, her gaze tracing the lines of his battered armor and scarred skin. "If I wished you dead, your atoms would already be ash." She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could feel the heat of her presence, close enough to see fine patterns etched into her chitin like ancient runes. "You saved the princess," she continued. "With no certainty of victory, no promise of survival, you chose sacrifice without hesitation." Elias snorted weakly. "Someone had to." "Exactly," she replied, "and that is why you are here." With a gesture, the chamber shifted, walls sliding apart to reveal a vast viewing aperture. Beyond it stretched the stars, countless and cold, the Terran capital world burning in the distance as alien ships withdrew in precise formations. Elias stared, his jaw tightening. "You're retreating." "For now," the Queen said. "The princess escaped, the symbol remains intact, the war continues." "Then why take me?" he demanded, turning back to her. "I'm nothing." Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, the immense age and intelligence behind them pressed against his mind. "You are not nothing," she said. "You are rare." She raised a claw and the air shimmered. Images flooded his thoughts, visions of battlefields across galaxies, warriors kneeling, cities falling, rulers bargaining with lives not their own. "In all my conquests," the Queen continued, "few offer themselves freely for another without command or reward." The images faded, leaving only the two of them standing amid the quiet hum of the ship. "In my culture," she said, "such a being is claimed." Elias felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. Claimed how? As mine. The word echoed, heavy with meaning, wrapping around his thoughts like a chain. You're insane, he said quietly. I'm your enemy. The Queen inclined her head slightly. You were. With another gesture, unseen forces lifted him gently, getting him toward a platform near the throne. His body resisted instinctively, but found no pain in the movement, only an unyielding inevitability. You will not be caged, she said, sensing his tension. You will be honored, protected, and studied. Studied, Elias echoed flatly. To understand what makes you what you are, she replied, to see if such loyalty can be cultivated. The platform settled, and the restraints dissolved entirely. Elias stood free, though surrounded by an empire that could crush him without effort. And if I refuse, he asked. The Queen leaned closer, her voice lowering, intimate and dangerous. You already chose when you placed your body between death and your princess. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant pulse of engines. Finally, Elias exhaled slowly, his shoulders slumping just a fraction. Then at least tell me your name. A pause, then something shifted in her expression, subtle but real. I am called Xyrathal, she said, sovereign of the ninth brood, devourer of suns, and now. Her eyes gleamed. Your queen. Before he could respond, the ship shuddered, lights flaring briefly. A subordinate voice echoed through the chamber in alien tones, urgent and sharp. Xyrathal straightened, her attention shifting to the unseen speaker, information flowing between them in silence. The princess has evaded our interceptors, she said calmly, turning back to Elias. She will rally her people. Good, Elias replied without thinking. Instead of anger, the Queen smiled, slow and predatory. Yes, she agreed, very good. She extended a hand toward him, palm open, not in threat but invitation. When she returns to face me, Xyrathal said, she will find that her greatest shield no longer stands before her. Elias stared at the offered hand, dread and determination twisting together in his chest. And where will I be? He asked. At my side, the Queen answered, as proof that even the strongest devotion can be claimed. Outside the viewport, the stars shifted as the flagship turned away from Terran space, carrying Elias Vaughn deeper into alien territory, toward a fate far stranger and more perilous than death. Days passed aboard the flagship, though Elias measured time only by the cycles of rest forced upon him and the slow healing of his wounds. The alien technology knitted bone and flesh with unsettling efficiency, leaving pale luminous scars where plasma and blades had torn him open. He was given quarters that rivaled any royal suite he had ever seen, walls of softly glowing crystal, a bed grown from living material that adjusted to his body, and a wide viewport that displayed the endless spiral of stars as the ship carved through hyperspace. It was not a prison. That realization disturbed him more than chains ever could. He could walk freely within a designated wing of the ship, escorted by silent sentinels whose insectal forms moved with unnerving grace. They never touched him, never threatened, yet their presence was a constant reminder that his freedom existed only because Xyrathal allowed it. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Crew members paused to stare as he passed, their thoughts brushing against his mind like curious fingers. Some radiated awe, others confusion, a few something dangerously close to reverence. Elias had become a symbol. The Queen summoned him frequently, sometimes to the throne chamber, other times to vast observation halls or war councils, where star maps floated in the air like constellations torn loose from the sky. He was never forced to speak, yet Xyrathal always watched him, studying his reactions, his silences, the way his jaw tightened at certain tactical decisions and relaxed at others. You disapprove, she said once, as holographic fleets clashed above them. You don't need my approval, Elias replied. No, she agreed, but I value your instinct. That unsettled him more than open cruelty would have. Between summons, Elias trained. The ship provided him with weapons tailored to his physiology, lighter than Terran steel yet stronger, energy blades that hummed softly when activated, and a combat arena where gravity and terrain could be altered at will. He fought alone at first. Later, challengers came. Warriors of the Ninth Brood faced him not with hatred but fierce curiosity. They tested his reflexes, his endurance, his refusal to surrender even when outmatched. Elias lost more bouts than he won. Yet every time he rose again, battered and bleeding, the watching crowd fell silent. Zarathal always watched. After one particularly brutal duel, Elias collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, vision swimming. The alien warrior opposite him bowed deeply before retreating. The arena lights dimmed as the queen descended from her elevated platform. She knelt before him. The sight sent a ripple through the gathered brood, shock and disbelief humming through the air. "You could command them," she said softly, placing two claws beneath his chin much as she had in the citadel. "With time." Elias laughed weakly. "I don't want command." "Why?" she asked. "Because command makes sacrifice disposable," he replied, meeting her gaze, "and I refuse to be that." Something ancient and dangerous stirred behind her eyes. "Yet you sacrifice yourself," she said. "For others," Elias answered, "not for power." She withdrew her hands slowly, rising to her full height. The moment passed, yet its weight lingered like a charged field. That night, sleep eluded him. He stood at the viewport, watching the stars drift by, wondering if Seraphine was safe, if the coalition still held, if his choice had bought enough time. "You ache for her," Zarathal's voice whispered into his mind. He did not turn. "I ache for what I left behind." She stepped beside him, gazing out at the void, her presence no longer oppressive, but strangely grounding. "She will come for you," the queen said, not as a threat but a statement. Elias shook his head. "She can't." "She will," Zarathal insisted, "because symbols demand it." He clenched his fists. "Then let me go." Silence stretched between them. Finally she spoke. "If I release you, you will return to her side." "Yes." "And you will stand against me again." "Yes," Elias said without hesitation. The queen turned to face him fully, her expression unreadable. "Then you misunderstand your value." With a flick of her wrist, the viewport shifted, showing a distant world below, lush and vibrant, ringed by defensive satellites bearing alien markings. "This is Karath," she said, "a frontier world. Its population rebelled against my rule 3 cycles ago." The image changed, showing cities intact, people alive, though watched by alien patrols. "I chose restraint," Zarathal continued, "because I remembered you." Elias stared at her, realization dawning. "You're using me," he said quietly. "Yes," she admitted, "as you used your body." Anger flared. "Lives aren't tools." "Nor are symbols," she countered, "yet both shape empires." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You are changing my dominion, Elias Vaughn." "That's not what you want," he said. "No," she replied, "it is exactly what I want." Her hand brushed his arm, not possessive, not threatening, but deliberate. "You are my prize," Zarathal said, "not because you are owned, but because you are rare." Elias pulled away, conflict raging inside him. "Then prove it." Her eyes narrowed, intrigued. "How?" "Let me choose," he said. "Give me a reason to stand beside you that doesn't involve chains, even golden ones." The queen studied him for a long moment, the fate of worlds balanced in her silence. At last she nodded. "Very well," Zarathal said. "I will give you a choice that may cost me everything." The stars beyond the viewport flared as the ship altered course, turning once more toward the heart of contested space. And Elias understood that whatever came next would decide not only his fate, but the fate of 2 empires bound together by a single act of sacrifice.